It's also a fact that trauma is very much how we interpret it on the inside, and that it's how it lands on us that is what creates the trauma, not just the event that's out there, but it's the reaction in here.
Yeah.
There was a paragraph from her book. I just wanted to read just a couple lines because it really, I think it's what we're talking about here, and I have it open to this page because it's so relevant. Reactions that are adaptive in a stressful world, like rapidly perceiving and responding to even small threats, can also be handicaps in a calmer environment. Being wired for a future in a threatening world can create a live fast, die young mind and body, and this increases addiction risk. In an uncertain world, it's rational not to count on anything too far in the future. However, this type of short-term thinking can lead to impulsive choices, like eating one marshmallow now rather than waiting for two later, or taking drugs rather than going to school. Alternatively, it can create a rigid desire for control to minimize the chaos. Either way, it makes evolutionary sense that the environments faced by parents and grandparents would affect the genes of their offspring. Being appropriately attuned to the expected level of resources and stress certainly can affect survival. The difficulty comes when those stress settings and the world are mismatched, or when ordinary stress is magnified by an oversensitive brain into a sense of uncontrollable stress.
Yes. And I think if people can understand that part of it right there, that opens up an entire kind of platform to understand the generation of PTSD, why some people reach out for external substances for help. I actually had an interesting experience just the other day. It was early morning. My dog got me up at 5, and I was up for some reason. So I decided we might as well go for a walk because there's not many people around at that time. And as we were walking, she was kind of doing her business, and I looked ahead, and there were 3 birds on the grass pecking around, doing their thing. And we approached a little bit closer, and one of the birds looked at us and flew away, far away up onto the school roof that's next to us. And I was like, okay, kind of thinking about it. And then the other 2 birds are still pecking away. We move a little bit closer, and then the next bird kind of looks, and after another step, he flies over to the fence and sits on the fence to watch us from there. And we get a little closer, and the other bird is still down there pecking away. Now, this is an excellent example of what Maya is talking about here. Depending on the threat of the environment, in this circumstance, a dog and me walking along is the threat. Those birds don't know what our intentions are, but the first bird was obviously from a lineage that was wired to get the hell out of there as soon as it sees anything that resembles a human or a dog. So, and maybe in a stable environment, when there was no, like, that threat was not real, then that bird missed out on some more food that it would have got and burnt some resources that it didn't need. So this, whatever bird survives, has offspring, and the traits of that, heightened anxiety or heightened awareness gets passed on. And you could see how that would accumulate. And now we're seeing it in the science where, you can get these heightened senses from living under duress, generation by generation, until you end up, and I've often felt this way myself. I feel like I'm not really designed for this world. Like I honestly feel like I would have done better in the medieval times or something, as maybe a soldier or something. Like, I just I don't like to look at. I'm by my nature, I'm now centered, which puts me at a risk, right? Because I'm aware of making plans down the road, but my priority is always the present, and it's just the way I'm wired. So I think that there's, throughout history, if you went back in your lineage, there would be periods of peace. The whole village had, let's say, 20 years of good crops. There was no fighting. There was no wars with other villages. Everybody was happy. The weather was good. all the children born in that time grew up, they had some children. And so you get a couple generations that are they're calm, they're calm. Everything's pretty good. But things change, and then they're very slow to react because they just are not set up for all of a sudden chaos. So we would have went through these periods of evolutionary, heightening of the senses, and then down to super calm, right?
Yeah.
And it's a big factor.
I think that example with the birds is great. It makes me think about the first responders who get so used to the chaos externally and the flood of adrenaline and dopamine internally that's happening when they're in a trauma setting or in a whatever the sort of fast-paced moment is. But it's much more the internal chaos that creates the reactive behavior. And that's, again, for my own experience, that was why taking me out of that environment made it possible, made staying clean possible.
Yes.
And for me, going back to our original question for Maya, for me, it that outweighed the risk of going back, and what that risk would mean, that the exposure to not only to the drugs, but the exposure to all of the circumstances that would have created that internal chaos that I would then have tried to soothe.
Yes. And you show a level of wisdom that is beyond what I've been able to demonstrate personally. And you being able to see that so early and recognize it for what it is, which is a life-threatening situation. That's not an exaggeration. There's really no winning for you if you're to return to that environment.
Mm-hmm.
It would be a war of attrition, basically. Sure, you could hold out for a while these little traumas continue to rain down on you with the odd, medium, and large size trauma accompanied, until your monitoring ran out and you started looking around. You had a bad day. You're low on sleep. You need to work another. And you're, fuck, I can't do it. What am I going to do? I'm going to quit. And then that narrowed thinking comes back, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you're really rolling the dice, and you don't deserve that. The people who love you don't deserve it. You did the right thing based on who you are as an individual and what you were facing.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. But it is such a personal decision, and it lands on each and every one of us individually to grapple with that. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think as long as the person is given if they're aware of the options, they're given the support and the time to process what just happened to them, and they've reached a state where they can at least see not going back as an option, then I'm happy with that as somebody who's involved. If I see somebody reach that point of contemplation where they're like, well, I don't have to do this. I could maybe either take a job that's in the same field but less chaotic, or I could switch out and do something else. Or I think once that stage is reached, then the people who are in a position to support that individual have kind of done their job.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.